got a project I want to make. Havel. Specifically the Dark Lord ending with Havel in it. I have a reference for this. Oh yeah, there we go. That's a better one. There we go. So, first thing to do when you start a painting is you actually want to figure out where stuff's gonna go. First, where the figure goes. I'm way ahead on part of it. Got the water, palette, paint scooper. In future, I will be using more than just the base colors, red, yellow, blue. But right now, I just got red, yellow, blue. I'm broke. So, where the figure goes, it helps to get a feel for where the middle of it is. I'm gonna put, that's where the top of his head's gonna be. That's where his feet are gonna be. Ground is uneven in it, so even it out. That's where his knees are about gonna be. His body's about gonna be. His shape is kind of angled because of his armor. So you're doing a kind of crescent shape. So head's about here because he's angled out. Shape him out. Get his legs in. He's gonna have a bend in his knee that's not visible because it's covered by his armor. So there's ways you could start doing it. You could do skeleton lines or you could do a net. I usually start with doing a skeleton and then a net and adjusting and moving it in. So his basic shape. His head is going to be about here, but it will look like his head's farther out here because that's where the fan on his helmet is. But, you know, that's what it is. You don't have to get precise on the original sketch because you're not going to see most of the precision once you start going into painting. You're just going to cover up a ton. And while we're at it, before we get going into the hyper details, let's do the outline, like the outside of it. So there's more to it. There's the figures on the outside, not very visible, but they are there. It's the cult members. Size, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 scale, but it's going to be roundabout. It's where the moon, or not the moon, the dark sign is. This is all Dark Souls related. Yeah. When you do your initial sketch, you don't want to do it very heavy because you're going to be redoing it over and over and over again, and you don't want to have to erase too much. Let's see. And right about here is some more detail there, but that'll be straightened out later when you start adding paint. Most of it will be straightened out later. Because that's the beauty of art, is it's not supposed to be perfect, especially not for a while. Let's see, feet are about here, planted down. He's got his plate armor down here. You just want to get the general figure, and then you perfect it later. There's where his plates down below are. With this one, I didn't want to screw it up, so I obsessively did and redid, so I have the best idea possible. I'm still going to screw it up somehow, but his feet are down here. So here's right foot around here. His armor plate, burning through lead. I should use a regular pencil, but no, I'm not. Of course not. His plate over here. And his boot kicks out over here. It's not supposed to be perfect. Nothing's supposed to be perfect until it's done. And even then, it doesn't have to be perfect then. What matters is you have fun, right? Let's see. His arms about here, so let's get that one. The hard part with getting too much detail in at once is if you screw up and you have to erase all of it, you have a lot that you have to redo. So just get the general net in, get it close as you want, and then perfect it as you go. Just here, his face is kind of angled down, so his face plate should be around here. And he's looking down, not out of sadness, but out of acceptance. That sounds way more depressing than I meant it. His gauntlet will be around here, because his fist is right about here. And remember, when you're painting, what needs to be conveyed is not so much precision as the idea. Like, you can constantly add details, almost ending endlessly, especially if it's acrylic. Oil, I've never done before. I'm assuming it's more complicated because it stays wet longer and more malleable. And it's more malleable most of the time. Let's see this over here. Some detail. So far, I think I'm getting the main detail in without too much difficulty. Definitely helps that I've done this as much as I have, this specific one. And one thing that's going to be very hard to see in the video, but once it's finished, it'll be more, how do I put it? I don't know. It'll be more visible. There's like rocks hanging out behind, and when you do jagged natural formations, it actually helps to kind of go crazy and just have fun with it, not worry about precision, especially because you're not doing a carbon copy. Whenever you're drawing something, it never has to be perfect and exact, unless it's a face. Then you kind of have to be more, because there's more details in it, and otherwise it's just not going to look like the original subject. But when it comes to less precise things like nature, you don't have to worry about keeping it precise. So then past his foot, there's the actual rock. Because now we're getting to the point, because now we're actually almost done with the initial sketch. It's not that bad. Let's see. There you go. Initial sketch, pretty much done. And then you can start laying out on the background. So now I'm actually going to pull up the original photo, because this is just from my sketch. It's not perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to grab the original image that I'm working off of. There we are. That's the one I'm using. So, in the sky, it looks like it's supposed to be a moon. It's supposed to be the dark sign. So, got rid of the lead. Then it kind of creeps down. Now, it's not going to be very clear, and that's kind of intentional, that it's going to be a sort of cloudy night, with like some light peeking in through the background. So, it's going to be kind of a deep blue, violet kind of color. So, I'm actually going to start mixing colors now. Now, when it comes to making colors lighter or darker, when you start mixing colors, you're not going to see the original color you're looking for when you just start mixing the reds, yellows, and blues. But before you start deepening or lightening colors, you have to do most of the legwork while it's not precise. Need blue. Okay, we got the reds, yellows, and blues. What I'm going for is a very gray color. But you don't need to use actual gray of like white and black. You can get gray just by mixing complementary colors. So for this color that I'm going for, since it's kind of like a bluish hue, you want blue and then mix orange. And then, as I'm probably going to need some red into it, but that can be added later. It doesn't have to be precise the first time. So I'm going to start with putting some orange on there, because mixing that later is going to be a pain in the butt, and I don't want to do that. To make colors like orange, you actually want to start off with the lighter color, like yellow, and then add red. I did a dumb, and I added red first, and then I started adding yellow. So it's going to be a little bit more paint than I originally intended. You should have plenty of rags on you. Shop towels like these could be on the pricier end, but they last longer. You can reuse the same towel over and over again. And you need a lot more blue. So I got a more reddish orange, which works out because I actually do want it to be kind of a violet color. See, it's already starting to look like that color I'm going for. It's hard to see, but for me it's already starting to look like it. I can see it coming in. Just need to add a little bit more. See, what I accidentally end up doing way too often is I end up making it too big, because when I mix colors, I kind of get a little bit loose with it, and then I end up running out of room on my palette, which is why it ends up looking like this. But, you know, I think I added too much yellow to it. That's fine. See, you should be trying to remove any streaks of color from it and try to get it towards one solid color. I don't typically do that because I like to make it look a little bit more fun, more character to the thing, but that's just me. Ultimately, it's your painting, do what you want. See, it's already getting sort of grayed out, and that's what you kind of want. You want it to be more grayed out, because no color is going to be perfectly saturated. A little bit more red, because it's getting too green. Too much red. Grab a little bit more blue to even it out. Let's add more blue. It's not quite there. Honestly, I think I should use this color and add it to the blue. Okay, maybe a smidge more. Almost exactly what I'm looking for. And I don't even think I need to add any white to it. I think stick with this solid color and then add stuff as I need it. So let's grab a brush. There's more solid color around these areas. And even if you're trying to go for a dark color, you don't have to go as dark as you think you do, because most things are not as dark as they look. Like, you look at a shadow and it's most likely not going to be all that dark. In fact, I didn't need to add any gray because that's already looking pretty light. You kind of want to lock in the color to the background. Get it in there. Let's see. I didn't quite do it the same way it looks in there, but that's okay. It's not supposed to just be a carbon copy of whatever you're referencing. Nothing should ever be a carbon copy of what you're referencing. See, I think it's too violet, honestly, but that's okay. With the background, you can keep playing with it till it's the way you want it. You can play with it pretty much as you want before it's done. It's almost watercolor, the way it's looking. But that's okay. But this one, you don't really need to do that. Kind of just lock it in. Not quite what I'm going for. You know what it needs? I'm gonna just throw some of that base color I was using that I added to the blue. See how that works out together. Let's see. And when you're using paint, you don't need to get all of the paint off unless you're switching to a light color. these are so far the same shade. So let's go to the back over here. And then add some of this in. Since it's still relatively wet, you can actually kind of blend the colors together a little bit. It's not perfect, but since it's still a little bit wet, you can pull some of the other color to what you're adding. The thing that helps me is just starting by adding stuff, just putting paint on the canvas and then working it out later. Yeah, it's gonna get there. Hopefully what I'm demonstrating with this is you can keep correcting with paint. You can keep correcting all you want. You can get to the color you want. Just keep trying. That's what matters. Ultimately, just keep trying, keep adding stuff. It's kind of like how my old teacher used to say, don't take your pencil off the paper, just keep working at it. Just keep adding. You'll get there eventually. I'm not the same as Bob Ross in that he was so good at doing stuff quickly and making it look good, and I was never able to keep up with that. Like, I've always thought it was really cool. I've never been able to keep up with that.
Welcome to Quantum Mechanics. My name is Brent Carlson.
Let's see. Let's add. Yep, this is the hard part about Havel. And why this is going to be a bit more of a challenge in that since I didn't lay out the details perfectly the first time, and his outline is probably not perfect, it's gonna be a little bit weird. But it's gonna be okay. With me starting off with a lighter hue, I can correct things as I go. It is what it is. And then let's grab some of this, start mixing the two together. And that's getting to be more the color you're supposed to be going for. So one thing that you can do, layering helps so much. And now it's actually starting to come together. It's kind of like with coloring, with pencil. If you've never done it before, this might not make a ton of sense, but with colored pencils, to do different blends, instead of getting like 20,000 different colors for colored pencils, you can mix the colors by stacking them on top of each other until you get the color you're looking for. It's an interesting thing about painting is you can layer it. It will have a different texture and it will get harder as you go, but you can definitely layer it. And that's usually what I end up doing. Because that color is what I'm looking for. And then noticing this negative space is where the figure is. You paint around and then you work your way to the figure. The last thing that you want to run into is when you've gotten all this work done, going, oh man, look at this. I got this figure down perfect. And then when you're doing the background, it cuts into them. And you realize, oh crap, I gotta redo all of that. But luckily when you do the background first, and then you do the figure, you're just filling an empty space. It's a lot nicer, and it feels so much better than having to fix something you screwed up before. It is a much better feeling. It's all coming together. So this first part is going to be the first, well, I guess you can call it second or third layer of paint on the background, but you will add more. I'm not hearing anything. Well, that's fine. That's fine. See, it's already coming through. It's looking pretty darn close to how it's supposed to. In fact, I think I'm just gonna start using up what's left and putting in to spots that I think it belongs. 'Cause, remember, it's not an exact copy. It's nothing you ever make is supposed to be an exact copy. And that is it for the first bit, and then you add more as you go. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix all those colors together, and I'm going to use that to create the black for the robes. And I'll just add more detail as it goes, because the important thing with the painting is don't be done with it until you're happy with it. When you're happy with it, then you stop, because there is such thing as overproducing. You don't want to do that. That ends up being a very unhappy experience. I'm going to take this chance while I have it and use the remainders. I like to just keep a consistent theme and reuse the colors as much as possible, because then I don't have to waste so much kind of grayish color, and then I'm adding black because the robes are actually just straight up black. Let's add some blue, because it's going to be a cool color. Kind of like in comics when to do black they use blue, and then they highlight it with white. It's not all that different. Because you'd be surprised how much color is in something that you think doesn't have color. You don't want to go too heavy on black, because you can add black, but you can't really take it away. When you're new to painting, you end up burning through white quicker than you go through black. You can pull away and just do some of it, and then add it to the white. You don't have to use the whole thing. Now, this is gonna be a lot darker of a color, but it's supposed to be a lot darker. Actually, it's not as dark as I was hoping for it to be. That's probably because my brush is still slightly wet. But I might use some actual black to add some extra depth to it. But that's for future me to think about. You perfect colors as you go. You don't always have to start with the right one. Actually, no, I don't think I need to add any more black to this. This is good. Just layer it. And then grab some, pull it down over here. You notice how it already is... I added blue, but it doesn't look blue anymore. It doesn't look like it has blue, but it does. There is definitely blue in there. Visible or not. I like to make my colors very mixed and wild, because that just feels more real to me. Even in something that's supposed to be the same color, same mute color, you can mix it together and it makes it a lot more tasty as a color. Because especially the more cheap acrylic paints, a lot of them like to block up and get sticky. So when you start to layer, especially, and you want to layer something else, it pulls it off of the canvas if you don't use a good primer. When you lock in the paint to the brush, it sticks with it longer rather than just putting it on the tip. Because then the only issue is you kind of ruin the brush, because as it gets closer to the metal, you don't want it to touch the metal, but Look at how I screwed up. It's already touching the metal. But it is what it is. It ain't gonna kill it. Unless it falls off, which has happened to me before. But, you know, it is what it is. This one has less detail. This one has more detail. So I'm gonna start by doing solid lines, and then I'll lighten it by adding some more blue, I think. Because what I'm noticing, which is weird that I'm noticing it now, you start to notice more details on things when you start to actually look at focusing on where the color's coming from. So, you know, just start with doing the basic layers. And then this one, because it's cloth, because it's on like a cultist robe, because it's cloth, it has its wrinkles, and it focuses from where the original ripple is. So most of them will kind of stem off the same part. So far, this is what I'm going with. It would be helpful to use a smaller brush, but, you know, that's alright. When you start doing the finer details, you use a finer brush. It is what it is. And I don't think it gets that deep of a color back here. Up here it's a bit deeper, so I'll go over here, add some in there. I don't really know what these bumps are. I think it's elbows, but yeah, whatever. And one thing is, even though it's not very visible, you can find the same color in multiple different spots of something, so it will be visible when it all comes together. There's actually some over here around a completely different part. So, I'm just adding a little bit and then leaving it be. I'll come back to that. And there's going to be some highlights over here. So, just penciling that in. And then I'm going to start mixing a color to start adding, because I'm just about done with the ripples. I'm going to start adding some blue. Paint knife, now I'm just going to start adding some blue to it. Pulling some blue and mixing the colors. You want to try to remove streaks, but I don't really worry about it all that much. Pulling into it. See, that's not what I'm looking for. That's fine. You can keep trying. That's more what I'm looking for, I think. Let's go like that. There we go. That's a little bit closer to the color you want. So when you start to get to the finer details, you want to kind of go off with something else. See, that's a lot closer to what I'm trying to get. It doesn't look like it right now, but once you start seeing how everything's kind of dark in it, these slightly lighter shades will start to pop more. You'll start to see them more visibly. Everything's a much more deep color. An important thing to note with saying shade versus depth is shade is literally depth. That's what it is. It's something that's deeper in, so it's going to be darker. Like you look into a forest, it's going to be a bit darker. But that's because you're deeper into the forest. Not because the forest is darker in itself. I'll do right there. Even though this one's less detailed, it actually still has some streaks of color. It's not quite as detailed as on the other one. So I'm gonna leave it a little bit and then add some highlights over here. But everything so far is being like very cautious with highlights because it's very dark. The entire image here is just dark. Color some in. Just a little bit more color. And then start working it in. And then this is a much lighter object right over here, but that's okay. That's okay. When you do sharper edges, you point the brush toward the edge, where the edge is. Toward the edge. So if your edge is down here, the surface is back there, you cut. It's already starting to seem like its own little thing. So when you got more flat surfaces, now I'm just gonna start pulling the paint off. And grab the lighter color that we had from before and start adding it back in for the shade. If you see some white spaces, you can fill that in later. It's fine. Just take the time and look for what you're missing. And then I'll start making it a bit foggy around here. And then start smudging it in a little bit. That way it doesn't quite look as obvious as it is. Just start to smudge it in because it's a little bit foggy out there. Let's get that in a little bit more. Because remember, this is the background. This is not the focal, so you don't have to worry so much about it. Hopefully the attention should be pulled to the figure in the center, not so much what's going on back here. It's a little bit foggy. Not a lot, just a little bit. Dry brushing is kind of a cheat, but it works. Start to get the stuff a little bit more precise as you go. Dry brushing's kind of my favorite thing, because you can layer color and just change it a little bit. You want to leave a little bit of that in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then let's get some more gray in there for highlight, because you reuse a lot of color. You'll always reuse some color. This is metallic, so you're gonna do a little bit of shading, some highlights. It's metallic, so just add a few highlights. Not crazy. In fact, I think that's gonna end up being the same color as that, but that's for future me to think about. This color is what I think this should be. So actually, you know what? While I'm here, I'm gonna start doing some of that, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit. So let's start doing those rocks in the first layer. We'll go in. Yeah, I think this is what that's supposed to be for later. But, let's see. I think that'll be the right color eventually. So we're doing the first layer. We can do highlights later. The first layer will be the basic of what it's gonna be. And then you can add more details later. You can always add more detail. And what you can do to sort of give yourself hints is actually leave some streaks in. Because this is supposed to have a little bit of a crease in it. In the rock. It's supposed to have a little bit of a crease. But I'm cheating by leaving a little bit of a streak so I know where to find that crease later. That'll help me find it later and see how we're going from different parts. And we're adding little bits of subtle detail to kind of keep it all coherent. Because it's all going to be the same. It's going to be the same rock. It's going to be the same core colors, because you'd be surprised how much of the same colors retained. And then start dragging his shadow down, because that's his shadow. I don't know how he casts his shadow, but he does. And see, even though his shadow is there, it's not that. It's a little bit more subtle. In fact, I think there's a slight glare is causing it to be not quite so visible. Yeah, currently we're just doing the background. Let's see. I don't know how clear that is, but it's actually not that. It's not as bright as it probably looks from down there. And you know what? I got a darker color in there, and I think I'm gonna use it for, you guessed it, this little bit in here. Pretty easy to make a circle if you really try. It's a soft glow for now. In case you didn't notice what I did, you do circle motion, but when you're doing that, you twist the brush at the same time, and you hold it on one axis. I was holding it on there. And if you get it down, you can make circles kind of consistently, because it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty close. I'd say it's close enough. Currently the brush strokes are pretty prominent, but when you start doing the highlights, it'll start making it a little bit easier to tell that it's not exactly that. It's almost like you're shading with a pencil, but not quite. When you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun. I'm gonna grab some straight white to do some of those highlights, and I'm gonna dry brush it in. Do little bits of highlights, strong white in there, and some little highlights in there. Let's see, where's the other one? Some highlights over here. Because there's a reason why there's a shadow, because there's a little bit of light coming off of that. So just let the light come in and use it. It's a little bit brighter, but that's okay. It's getting to what it's supposed to be. Some more color, some more texture. Nothing's supposed to be perfect. It's all gonna have its own little flow. There's some of that in there. It's already coming together. See, one of the things that actually is slightly benefiting from the fact that it's subtle is it was subtle to me when I was looking at the original picture. I didn't originally see these rocks. So the fact that they're on the more subtle end is not exactly a bad thing. In fact, that's pretty close to what it originally was. So, you know what? I see no downside here. Well, there's the problem. It bled into the lighter color. But that's okay, use it. Use it for a little bit more detail. We're gonna finish up the background with a completely new set of paint, because the rest of it is gonna be like orangish hues, reddish, orangish, yellowish. Since we're resetting, basically, clean off the brush. Now, here's the fun part: is you're gonna leave a lot of leftover colors you're gonna use for later, and that's okay. And see that? We're leaving that because I'm gonna use it later. That rag lasted a while because these towels are good and they're also strong, so you don't get a bunch of fiber flakes. That sounds like a really terrible cereal. Then clean off the knife. You can start mixing colors like it's brand new. If your bucket of water doesn't look like mud by the end of the painting, you're not having fun. Because the colors on the original one are pretty mute, I'm gonna try to dry brush it. And then, because it's not going to be super strong color, we'll add some more on the highlights, but it's going to be bleeding into it. It's not going to be completely new. It's not going to be bright lights. There's not going to be anything bright aside from the subject in this one, actually. The subject's actually going to be slightly bright here. And then as you get to a more dry end, you can start using it a little bit more crazily. And it's bleeding through there, so you can start wiping some of it off with your finger or with a brush. Just trying to beat it into there so that it's more mixed in than just solid. Let's do the highlights here, here, and here. This is almost done, because next up, and then we'll be done with the background until we do the finer details. A smidge of yellow, because you don't want it to be quite green. And then some white. And since white's going to be the main color, you're going to pull some colors into the white. This is going to be... That will be perfected later, but that's okay for now. And hopefully it's a little bit wet still, and I'm going to be trying to do a little foggy. Leaving that be. Perfect it later. The hard but interesting part. The main focus. And this part will either be really quick or take a very long time. So, it looks like the version I did wasn't exactly perfect, but that's okay. Let's get started by getting to the color we want. Let's see. Since it's stone, it's very gray. It's gonna have some highlights on it of orange. Let's see. I'll gray out some blue. Start by making violet. It doesn't have to be mixed perfectly smooth with no streaks, but it helps. Okay, that's more like a reddish violet. So get some more blue, and that should be close to the color we're looking for. Yep, and then add a little bit of yellow to gray it out. It's kind of like with regular light, visible light. You can mix colors and turn it to white. We're going to be doing the same, but with gray. This is getting grayed out, definitely. But not as much as I want it to be. It's more of a brown now. So let's add some more blue. You want it to be kind of hard to tell what color it is the goal. You want to make it hard to see which one's the primary color in there. And just for gits and jiggles, I'm gonna see what color that actually is gonna end up by testing it on the side of the canvas. I think it's more red than it should be. Yeah, it's more red than it should be. That's okay. I think it's safe to add some more blue, but instead of doing completely fresh amount, I'm gonna pull some away and set it aside. So now I got 2 stacks, and this one I'm gonna use. I might use that brown to touch up some other spots. I'll see where there's some brown in there and add it in there. Maybe I'll highlight those rocks a little bit. We test it on the side of the canvas, because once you get to the more detailed parts of it, it's really hard to tell the right color, and you don't want to go over too much. Color on the side looks like what I want, I think. Yeah. So let's get the basic outline. It's a lot more brown than I thought it would be, but that's okay. We'll do multiple layers. It'll start to look more like it's supposed to as we go. Over here, there's going to be some depth in there. It should be fairly clear what he's supposed to be based on the cell shading I'm doing right now. My initial sketch wasn't that accurate, it would seem. That's okay. Accuracy is not paramount. What matters is when you're satisfied with the final product. That's where his knuckles are. Okay, now I'm gonna start going crazy, adding some white. And rather than mixing into the white, pull some white away and use it. Is that the shade I want on the side? Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Now, it's gonna be doing little cell shades at a time. More detail will be added later. I have an overabundance of paint now, which, it is what it is. Now it's starting to come together a bit. That's where the layering comes in. Now we're doing a slightly lighter shade, so we're taking some of the white. It's slowly starting to get to the point it's supposed to be. So now you're starting to add some highlights here and there. Get some more breath in it. I think I kind of screwed that part up, but that's okay. I can come back to it. Get a lot more white for this part. So now we're going deeper into the highlights. While you might get tempted to use more of the empty space, you really shouldn't, much as you're tempted. See, that already looks fairly close to what Havel looks like. It's just little bits are missing. Little bits of detail. I thought it was going to take longer than it is. But you know what? I will not shoot down an opportunity. That was a slight mistake, but it's fine. Okay, now I'm going to wipe this off, and we're going to go back to a deeper color, because there's spots that I missed over there that I didn't notice. His fingers. His hand's a little bit more pronounced. Then there's a spot in here that's a lot deeper of a color. And a spot down here that's a lot deeper of a color. Yeah, I think that's good. Now, just to do some highlights on the rock. Don't want to make them pop out too much, so we're not going to go too crazy. I think it's just about done. Just filling in the empty spaces. That's not so bad. You know, ooh, just messed up. It's okay. You can paint over spots you mess up. See that here? There we go. Fixed. Because there's some spots I missed earlier, but I'm fixing them now. Uh-oh. I completely ignored his feet. Uh-oh. Completely forgot those were there. Okay. Now, hard part, some spots I missed were in the background. Because I was being a bit of a coward, I just didn't go for it at all. So, I'd say that's solid for now. And rest of it's going to be perfecting some spots. Ooh, I didn't see that. I'm actually about to demonstrate something. Now that I think of it, this is a good time to do this. So you see the spot down here? It actually looks a little bit like the spots up there. And I didn't perfect that shadow down there, so it almost looks like it's an empty space. Well, that's because it is. So we're going to reuse some of this deeper shade. And then take some black. Because it was there. Might as well use it. And then place it right back in there. Oh, no. Stays there. Alright. Now all that's missing is the embers on it, but I'll wait for it to dry before I start adding it. I'll have some detail to add on the fingers later. So for now, we're just going to handle the background and actually add that finishing touch there. Okay, let's make violet again. Deepen the color around here. Fill in the empty space. And put that in the black. Then we can start filling in the background over here. I kind of made him a smidge too fat, but you know. His armor's heavy, so I guess it wasn't so big of a deal that I made him a bit too fat. Alright, now just for the embers, and then I think it's done. Yeah, this should be fine. It's gonna get a little bit in. Oh, let's try not to get so many splotches in there. Go. A little bit, that's fine. Maybe I didn't need to add the ember, but it's already there. Might as well run with it. And then, I think that's actually dry enough to add a little bit more detail to his hand. So let's do that now. And I think that'll do. I didn't think I'd finish this guy up so quick. I thought it would take longer. I think I'm satisfied. So yeah, this is my first video. I appreciate any of you guys for watching. It's my first edit too, so let me know if there's anything I can improve on. Thank you guys for watching.